David Neeleman has founded 5 commercial airlines: Morris Air, WestJet, JetBlue, Azul, and Breeze. 3 countries, 4 decades, one man behind all of them, and he was thrown out of 2 of them, including one he owned outright. Today, the airline he built and lost, JetBlue, posted a net loss of $602 million in 2025, its 6th straight unprofitable year. Meanwhile, his newest airline, Breeze, is the sole operator on nearly 90% of its 220 routes, and it was just named to Time's 100 Most Influential Companies of 2026. The same man is behind the airline collapsing and the airline soaring. He got fired by the idol he sold his first company to. Years later, he got fired by the company he founded himself. So how does the man they kept firing keep building the airlines that humiliate everyone else? This is the story of a founder who turned 2 firings into fuel, told to leave the room twice, back each time with a sharper weapon. A story about revenge, timing, and a playbook legacy carriers spent 25 years laughing at, right up until it started beating them. He got pushed out of his own creation. He should have disappeared. Instead, he built again, and the discarded blueprint is now the one that wins. It didn't start as a mogul story at all. Back in 1984, it started with a travel agency in Salt Lake City. Neeleman wasn't born into aviation royalty. He was a Utah entrepreneur with attention deficit disorder, dyslexia, and a talent for the thing everyone else found boring: the plumbing of how airlines actually sell seats. That year, he co-founded a scrappy low-fare carrier called Morris Air with a travel agency owner named June Morris, who ran Salt Lake City's Morris Travel. He came in as executive vice president. By 1988, he was president of the whole operation. Morris Air was small. It was also quietly ahead of everyone. It became the first airline in the world to offer ticketless electronic reservations, a system built in-house. This was the industry's first true e-ticketing, the technology every major carrier on Earth would eventually copy. While the giants were still printing paper tickets and paying travel agents, a Utah upstart had already skipped ahead a generation. That kind of thing gets noticed. In December 1993, Southwest Airlines moved to acquire Morris Air in a stock deal, 3.6 million shares of Southwest common stock, with the value reported somewhere between roughly $122 and $134 million because a stock deal fluctuates with the share price. Neeleman himself walked away with, by most accounts, around $25 million. He was 33 years old. Here's the part that matters. Neeleman didn't just want the money, he idolized the man who ran Southwest, the legendary low-fare pioneer Herb Kelleher. Neeleman later said he'd have sold Morris Air for a lot less just to work beside him. The sale came with a seat on Southwest's executive planning committee. He got the payout, and he got the man he'd chased his whole career. He got everything he wanted. It nearly ended everything. Roughly 5 months into that seat, the idol he'd chased did the unthinkable. Kelleher took him to a Ruth's Chris steakhouse in Dallas, sat him down, and fired him. The reason, Kelleher told him, was that he was too impetuous. Neeleman later put it more bluntly. He admitted, driving too many people crazy. The man he'd sold his company to just to be near had discarded him over lunch, and Kelleher wasn't finished protecting himself. He enforced a 5-year non-compete agreement, and he enforced it hard, telling Neeleman he'd fight it tooth and nail because he knew exactly what Neeleman would become. The clause barred him from running a domestic airline. It wouldn't expire until 1998. Under the personal drama sat cold operational logic. Both Morris Air and Southwest flew the Boeing 737-300, a single common fleet type Kelleher openly cited as the thing that made the merger clean. On paper, the deal made perfect sense. On a personal level, it had just cost a 33-year-old the mentor and the future he thought he'd bought. Most people would have called that the end. Neeleman, decades later, called it the beginning. His own reflection became the thesis of everything that followed. There wouldn't be a JetBlue today, he said, if Herb hadn't fired him. It's how you deal with it and what you make of it. A 5-year clause now blocked him from the one thing he was built to do, so he did the only thing a caged airline founder can do. He built the parts. Banned from running a US airline, Neeleman spent the exile years building the machinery that would make his next airline lethal. Working with his old Morris Air technology partner, David Evans, he created a company called Open Skies, described as the world's simplest airline reservation system. It pulled together everything the industry was still fumbling with: e-ticketing, internet booking, and revenue management, all in one platform. He didn't just sit on it, he sold Open Skies to Hewlett-Packard in 1999. And he didn't stop at software. During the very years he was barred from the American market, he helped launch a brand new airline in Canada, WestJet. He put in 5% of the startup capital himself and served as a director from roughly 1996 to 1999. WestJet was named in May 1995 and flew its first commercial flights on February 29, 1996, with 3 planes. Inside 6 months, it had logged a $2.5 million profit. The non-compete only blocked a domestic US carrier. It said nothing about Canada and nothing about selling technology. So he funded a foreign airline, watched it turn a profit almost immediately, and quietly built the reservation system that would run his next empire. Open Skies didn't just serve WestJet, it powered British Airways' low-fare subsidiary GoFly, and it doubled as the test laboratory for the airline still forming in his head. The caged years weren't downtime, they were research and development. He'd built the tech, funded a foreign carrier, proven the low-cost model twice over, and waited out the clock. The moment the clause died, he moved. JetBlue was incorporated in Delaware in August 1998 under the name New Air. The name JetBlue itself wasn't unveiled until a press conference in mid-July 1999, and it launched with something no startup airline had ever managed. Neeleman raised roughly $130 million in capital, an unprecedented war chest for a new airline, from backers including Chase Capital Partners, George Soros's quantum funds putting in around $40 million combined, and Western Presidio at $30 million. JetBlue began operations on February 11, 2000, with its inaugural flight from JFK's Terminal 6 to Fort Lauderdale on an Airbus A320. The pitch was ruthless. Undercut competitors' fares by an average of 65%. Then pair those low fares with the things legacy carriers had stripped out: leather seats, extra legroom, free snacks, ticketless booking, and the piece that turned heads. In 2000, JetBlue became the first US carrier to put free live television at every single seat, a 24-channel DirecTV system. Under the surface, the technology from the exile years was doing the heavy lifting. JetBlue's reservations ran through work-at-home agents in Salt Lake City, around 300 people handling 12,000 calls a day at a cost of about $4.50 per ticket versus $14 through a travel agent. Pilots got laptops instead of paper manuals. The test laboratory had become a real airline. It caught fire. By December 2000, JetBlue announced its millionth customer and its third profitable month, already flying to 10 destinations on around $100 million in first-year revenue. In February 2001, it filled a higher percentage of its seats, 79.9%, than any other US carrier. Then the industry hit its worst crisis in a generation. After September 11th, airlines bled cash by the billions. JetBlue was one of only 2 US carriers to turn a profit in the downturn. In the first half of 2002, it netted $28 million on $283 million in revenue. That April, it went public on NASDAQ under the ticker JBLU. Neeleman's rallying cry, the line he repeated to anyone who'd listen, was that he was going to bring humanity back to air travel. He very nearly named it something else. The original plan was to call the airline Taxi with a yellow New York-themed livery until investors talked him out of it. The disruptor looked untouchable, profitable when giants folded, a product that made flying feel new again. Then, one ice storm found the crack. A forecast ice storm hit New York on Valentine's Day, February 14, 2007, and didn't clear the way JetBlue's planners expected. That day, only 17 of the airline's 156 scheduled departures out of JFK left the ground. The disruption cascaded for about 6 days. JetBlue was forced to cancel more than 1,000 flights, and Neeleman personally apologized to over 131,000 affected customers. The storm didn't cause the collapse, it exposed the structure underneath it. The dispersed work-at-home reservation workforce that had been so cheap and clever couldn't scale for a mass rebooking emergency. The JFK kiosks had no self-serve rebooking function. The airline leaned on a single weather-prone hub, and FAA icing rules stopped JetBlue's planes from taking off, while inbound planes kept landing, jamming the gates with aircraft that couldn't leave. Every efficiency that built the airline turned into a liability at once. At the time, the lean at-home model looked like the smartest cost decision in the industry. Later, on one frozen morning, it became the thing that broke the company in public. Neeleman moved fast to fix the reputation. On February 20th, 2007, he unveiled a JetBlue customer bill of rights, backed by roughly $30 million in compensation and flight credits, an amount close to what the meltdown itself cost the airline. It was a textbook crisis response. It wasn't enough to save him. On May 10, 2007, the board removed Neeleman as CEO. His replacement was his own co-founder, the operations-minded Dave Barger, and Neeleman was pushed sideways into a non-executive chairman role. Accounts of the period note that Barger had politicked the board while Neeleman was busy publicly apologizing. A year later, on May 21, 2008, JetBlue named Joel Peterson chairman, replacing Neeleman entirely. Fired by his hero, now fired by his own creation, twice removed from airlines he'd built, one of which had made him famous. So what does a man who's now done it twice do next? He started over again. Azul was founded on January 3, 2008 and began operations in Brazil on December 15th of that year, flying out of Campinas with 3 Embraer 195s and 2 Embraer 190s. It grew into a giant. By 2025, Azul carried a record 32 million passengers on revenue of 21.8 billion Brazilian reais, around $4.1 billion, making it the largest airline in Brazil by departures and by cities served. Then he built a fifth. Breeze Airways, working name Moxie, flew its first flight on May 27, 2021 from Charleston to Tampa. It launched with 39 non-stop routes across 16 cities, introductory fares starting at $39, and 13 second-hand Embraer jets leased from Azul, picked up at about 25% of the cost of a new aircraft. The strategy was the old playbook, sharpened to a point: fly the city pairs nobody else serves non-stop. At launch, Breeze claimed the vast majority of its routes had no non-stop competition at all. That bet is paying off exactly as designed. Breeze carried over 4.2 million passengers in 2024 and posted its first profitable quarter in the fourth quarter of that year, with revenue topping $680 million, up 78% over the prior year. In early 2026, it operated nearly 41% more flights than the year before, and it stands as the sole operator on nearly 90% of its 220 routes. Neeleman has pointed out that 125 US cities have lost more than a quarter of their air service. And he's told Bloomberg that Breeze could eventually run up to 400 aircraft. It doesn't need to fly everywhere, it needs to be the only one flying where it does. Here's the double irony that closes the scoreboard. On February 20th, 2026, Azul emerged from Chapter 11 bankruptcy with around $2.5 billion less debt, and the Neeleman family lost its controlling 67% voting stake in the airline he'd built, with American and United each ending up with roughly 8% after investing $100 million apiece. Meanwhile, JetBlue, the airline that fired him, spent the same stretch losing everywhere it turned. Its $3.8 billion acquisition of Spirit was permanently blocked on antitrust grounds on January 16, 2024. Its Northeast alliance with American had already been ruled illegal in May 2023 and ordered dismantled. Under CEO Joanna Garagti, its jet-forward turnaround has meant exiting 15 cities and dropping more than 50 routes. The fired founder's discarded playbook, service, technology, and the routes everyone else ignored is the one now winning, while the two airlines that hold his name are the ones bleeding control. For 25 years, the legacy carriers dismissed the outsiders' bets. Bet on service, bet on in-seat technology, bet on the small forgotten routes with no non-stop flights. Each time they waved it off, and each time the disruptor playbook came back and beat them. It's repeating right now against a struggling JetBlue, while the man they fired builds airline number 5. He never stopped being the founder in the aisle. As JetBlue's CEO, Neeleman flew his own flights nearly every week, walking the cabin handing out snacks, taking feedback from passengers, telling them, "You have to try the biscotti." Not a mogul in a boardroom. A man who couldn't stop building, standing in his own aisle, still convinced the way you treat the person in seat 14C is the whole business. There wouldn't be a JetBlue, he said, if Herb hadn't fired him. And he's still ordering aircraft, 90 firm A220s on the books and a 400-plane ambition out loud. The founder they fired twice, still building. Click here to check out another video.